Number 1. The Bloody Benders. Before we begin on the Bloody Bender family, it should be noted due to the time in which these crimes occurred, fact and fiction have melded together in many depictions of the family. I think it's fair to say they have become folklore in their own right. Now this isn't to say they didn't exist or commit these crimes, because they definitely did. But many so-called facts are speculation or can't be backed up with sufficient evidence. I've done my best to make it clear, whether it's fact or speculation, when referencing the information I found. Okay, let's begin. The Bloody Benders were a family of German settlers in Labette County, Kansas, around the time of 1871 to 1872, responsible for over 11 confirmed murders. The family consisted of 4 members, the first 2, John Bender Sr. and Elvira Bender. It is said neither John Sr. or Elvira spoke much English. John Sr.'s speech when attempting to speak English was guttural and quite often unintelligible. Elvira, however, did not let her limited English stop her from aggressive spats with neighbours, earning her the label of she-devil. Claims the couple were aggressive can be verified by writings from those who encountered them at the time. Here is a quote from these writings describing John Sr. Quote, "The old man is a repulsive, hideous brute, without a redeeming trait, dirty, profane, and ill-tempered." And if you think that's bad, here's what they had to say about Elvira. Old Mrs. Bender was a dirty old Dutch crone. Her face was a fit picture of the midnight hag that wove the spell of murderous ambition about the soul of Macbeth. Elvira herself had an interesting past. You see, they say John was not her first husband. Elvira was said to have married a man by the name of Simon Marg, and Elvira herself was claimed to have given birth to 12 children. After this marriage, it is said she then married a William Griffith. It is speculated she murdered a number of her previous husbands, but there is no in-depth information or evidence to prove it. Moving on to their 2 children, John Jr. and Kate, who was believed to be Elvira's 5th child. We find further speculations on the validity of the siblings' relationship to one another. Some say they were actually married, while others state they were merely siblings. And it should be noted, while believed to be German, it is thought by some that John Sr. was actually Dutch, and there is no conclusive evidence to verify the family's blood relation. While John Sr. and Elvira kept to themselves, John Jr. and Kate were considered to be fairly social, attending Sunday school in Harmony Grove. John Jr. was believed to be a handsome man who spoke fluent English with a German accent, but would often laugh aimlessly, leading others to believe him a half-wit. The writings found about John Jr. say, quote, "Young Bender, seen when excited, recalled the grave-robbing hyena at once to mind." Kate, on the other hand, spoke fluent English with minor traces of a German accent, and was considered both intelligent and attractive. Considering herself a healer and a psychic, Kate would often pass out flyers in town selling her services to cure illness and conduct seances, as well as lectures on spiritualism. It seems whether or not Kate and John Jr. were really brother and sister did not bother Kate, as she was an advocate for free love and denounced the idea of purity and prevention of satisfying sexual desires. Kate was quoted as referencing these ideals as, quote, "miserable requirements of self-constituted society," and went so far as to defend her rights to be intimate with her brother by writing in her lectures, quote, "Shall we confine ourselves to a single love, and deny our nature their proper sway? Even though it be a brother's passion for his own sister, I say it should not be smothered." If that wasn't controversial enough, Kate spoke of murder in her lectures, describing it as a dictation for good and, quote, "that in what the world might deem villainy, her soul might read bravery, nobility, and humanity." Previous writings describe her by saying, "Kate proclaimed herself responsible to no one save herself." Kate's notoriety in town is actually what helped attract people to the Bender's Inn. The inn was a place for weary travellers to buy supplies and rest for a time before moving on. Unfortunately for the same travellers, it was a place the Bloody Benders committed their murders. When the unlucky travellers would book a night at the Bender's Inn, they were given a seat of honour at the table. The traveller would be facing away from a curtain behind them, and under the seat lay a trap door leading to the Bender's cellar. Kate would then distract the guest, and one of the 2 Johns would approach from behind the curtain, striking the guest in the head with a hammer. Either Kate or Elvira would then cut their throat to finish the job. Once sure their victim had passed, they would drop the body through the trap door and into the cellar. These bodies were later stripped and buried in the family's orchard. What makes these murders even more chilling is it's noted there were wealthy travellers, but also those with items of little to no value, suggesting the Benders merely killed them for the sake of it. Now, this method was not always effective. There are a number of people who managed to survive the visit to the Benders Inn. William Pickering testified he'd fled the property after Kate threatened him with a knife for refusing to sit near the stained cloth curtain. William was not the only one. There was also a Catholic priest who is said to have left the property after noticing one of the Benders concealing a hammer. 2 men also stated they had visited the inn to see Kate Bender's psychic powers and stayed for dinner. After refusing a seat at the table and requesting they eat at the front counter, Kate became aggressive and the 2 Bender men appeared from behind the cloth, causing the 2 uneasy travellers to depart as quickly as they could. Over a dozen bullet holes had been found in the roof and the sides of the cabin, causing the media to speculate that death was not always instant, and some may have tried fighting back after the initial hammer attack. In the winter of 1872, William Henry York went searching for a missing man and his daughter who planned to settle in Iowa, and never returned. William's brother, Colonel Ed York, went looking for the missing doctor, and arrived at the Benders Inn on March 28, 1873. The Benders admitted he had stayed in the inn, but suggested Indians were the cause of his disappearance. Ed York agreed it was a possibility and left the property, only to return with armed men on the 3rd of April after hearing from a woman who fled the property that Elvira Bender had threatened her with a knife. After a town meeting, accusations began to let loose. Ed York patiently waited on a search warrant for the property. It was 3 days after this meeting that cattle drivers passed the Benders' property and found the inn abandoned and animals unfed. Due to bad weather, it took several more days before the property could be investigated. When a search party of several hundred arrived at the inn, they found it empty. There was, however, a foul smell that led to the trapdoor, now nailed shut and hidden under a bed. When they opened it, they found the smell was coming from a pool of blood at the bottom of the cellar. After searching the property, Dr. York's body was found buried face down under an orchid. After marking points of disturbed soil, the digging resumed in the morning, and another 8 bodies were found in the soil of the orchards and vegetable gardens, while an additional body and other limbs were found in the Benders' well. All but one of the bodies had the trademark MO of the Benders, struck in the head with a hammer, and their throat cut. The one body that did not fit the MO was a young girl, believed to have been buried alive. Dr. York's brother and senator, Alexander York, not to be confused with Ed York, the one that was looking for him, offered a $1,000 bounty for the Bender family. And on May 17th, the Kansas governor, Thomas A. Osborne, offered an additional $2,000 reward. The combined $3,000 bounty is equivalent to about $64,000 as of 2020. A team of detectives followed the wagon tracks of the Benders' wagon. They found the Benders' horses abandoned and starving just outside of Thayer, and it was made clear to them that the family had purchased train tickets to the city of Humboldt in Kansas and split up on arrival. John Jr. and Kate headed towards Denison in Texas and were thought to have traveled into an outlaw colony between Texas and New Mexico, while John Sr. and Elvira traveled through Kansas City. Despite the bounty and efforts from law enforcement and vigilante groups, the Benders' arrest was never confirmed. Number 2. Sony Bean Clan. The Sony Bean Clan were cave-dwelling cannibals and were said to number 45 people in the 16th century in Scotland. It's estimated they murdered and cannibalized over 5,000 people in 25 years. Fun fact, they were also the inspiration for the movie The Hills Have Eyes. As with the Bender family, due to the time in which these murders occurred, the line between fact and fiction has melded together. Historians cite insufficient evidence to verify as factual, but regardless, it's an interesting story. The Sony Bean clan started with Alexander Sony Bean, who left his family home in East Lothian in the 16th century after meeting Agnes Doubles, a notoriously aggressive woman who was accused of being a witch. The couple stumbled upon their coastal cave that would become their home for the next 25 years in Benane Head between Girvan and Ballantrae. The cave was said to have tunnels stretching over a mile long, with an entrance that would become blocked with water twice a day during high tide. Alexander and Agnes birthed 8 sons and 6 daughters. The children practiced incest and produced a further 18 grandsons and 14 granddaughters. All 45 members of the clan lived within the cave and survived by ambushing travelers during the night. After murdering and robbing their victims, they would drag the bodies back to be eaten. The parts that weren't eaten were pickled in barrels and saved for later. Locals knew people were going missing, but the Bean clan dwelled in a cave during the day and only came out during the night. Search parties became aware of the cave's existence, but no one believed it possible any human could live in such a place. The night that brought the clan to its eventual downfall was when they decided to ambush a married couple on a horse from a local fair. The wife fell from the horse they were on and was mauled to death by the clan, but the husband fought them off with a sword and pistol. Before they could overwhelm him with their numbers, a large group of fairgoers appeared on the trail and caused the Beans to flee. The survivor was taken to the king, and a search party of 400 men with several bloodhounds was sent to investigate. These bloodhounds led the men to the cave, previously thought to be uninhabitable, and the search party entered by torchlight. Inside the cave, they found the Bean clan surrounded by human remains, some of which were hanging from the walls, barrels filled with limbs, and piles of stolen goods from their victims. There are two versions depicting the fate of the Bean clan upon discovery. Number 1. The Bean clan surrendered without a fight and were promptly executed without trial as they were seen as subhuman to the public. The men had their sexual organs cut off and thrown into a fire, as well as their hands and feet severed. It is said Alexander shouted, "It isn't over, it will never be over," before passing. After watching the men's execution, the women and children were tied to stakes and burned alive. Number 2. The search party used gunpowder to close the opening of the cave, effectively suffocating the Bean clan and barring their exit. Number 3. This family of Russian serial killers, referred to by the media as the Gang of Amazons, were responsible for the killings of at least 30 people. Inessa, the mother, a former nursery teacher, and her husband Roman, a qualified dentist, as well as their two daughters Victoria and Anastasia, were all involved in the vicious serial killings. Outside of the family, there were another 2 suspected accomplices. Roman's sister Anastasia, not to be mistaken with their daughter, was suspected of housing the victims' goods, and her husband, who was a police officer, who allegedly provided inside information to aid the family during their crime spree. The family would go on what appeared to those from the outside as camping trips, but they were really going out to commit murders. The family would break into the back of homes with a well-planned escape route while using walkie-talkies to communicate police movements, ensuring they evaded capture. On February 17, 2008, MacLeod, head of the Information Security Department of the State Drug Control Service, was at home with his wife when the group entered and shot both, finishing them off with knives. The family then stole a doublet, a jacket, and a television remote. 5 months later, on July 17, 2008, the family shot a car on the federal highway, killing a man and wounding his wife. The family then stole a purse and a passport from the car. July 8, 2009, the family shot Lieutenant Colonel Dmitry, his wife, and 7-year-old son while they were parked on the side of a road. Dmitry's daughter Veronica was then stabbed 37 times. The family took off with a hairdryer, laptop, and camera, leaving the family's jewelry behind. In March 2009, the family broke into a home, shooting 2 people inside before finishing them off with knives. Again, the family acquired items of limited value, such as passports, a laptop, a camera, women's boots, another doublet, and a man's jacket. In 2010, the family broke into a home and waited for the victims to return. Inessa was aware the family had money and guns. This piqued Inessa's interest as she stated she wanted to steal the guns because her father enjoyed hunting. When 2 teenage girls entered, they were robbed and murdered, one of which was believed to be Inessa's goddaughter. They were tortured and had their eyes gouged out before the family murdered them. On September 19, 2012, the family shot and murdered 2 security guards responding to a triggered alarm at a dentist clinic, this time stealing the security guards' service weapons, which included an assault rifle and 2 pistols. On November 29th of the same year, the family entered the home of a taxi driver and murdered the man with the security guard's stolen guns as he attempted to pursue them. On March 2013, the family triggered a car alarm, and a car inspector who attempted to detain them was shot and killed. On April 8, 2013, the family triggered another set of alarms at a grocery store, shooting at 2 employees who arrived at the store. The driver was wounded but survived, while the other employee in the car died from their wounds in hospital. April 24th of 2013, a man left his home intending to go for a drive when he was shot and murdered at point-blank range. Luckily, the family was unable to get into the house as the door was locked and they fled, sparing the man's wife and child. September 8th, 2013, Roman and Victoria shot at an unarmed couple and robbed the home of a former military officer. Unable to find money, the family stole candles, alcohol, and chicken drumsticks from the fridge. Leaving the home on a scooter, they were stopped by a patrol officer who asked for ID. Roman opened fire on the man and a gunfight ensued. After killing the patrol officer, backup arrived and Roman was shot to death. Victoria was seriously wounded but survived the injuries. Police then arrested Inessa and Anastasia at their campsite, recovering 25 firearms, silencers, grenades, ammunitions, and items stolen from the victims. At the end of all this, Inessa was sentenced to 21 years, Victoria 16, and Anastasia 19 years for the murder of 10 people. And there you have it, 3 serial killer families. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening.